This is Chapter 4, Hands-On Exercise Number 1, and we're working with a chapter called Data Sets and Tables. In this first module, we're going to look at freezing rows and columns, managing page breaks, setting and clearing the print area, and printing titles. Now keep in mind we are working with the Chapter 4 file, the hands-on exercise called Read, and this is the Read Furniture Store. And if we look at the data, for the first time ever, we have more data than we can see on the screen. In fact, we have 107 rows of data right now. This is the monthly transactions of March 2016. We have some information on the transaction number, the first and last name of the salesperson, the date of the transaction, what department the furniture came from, what type of furniture it was, whether they paid in full or financed their purchase, and whether they had a sale price or a standard price, and the amount of each transaction. So this is more typical of what we would see with actual data sets where they're a little bit large. Now 107 records isn't large, but it's the largest one that we've dealt with so far. So the first thing we want to talk about is freezing rows and columns. And if we were to look through, we could, and this is going to be in the View section, we could use the freeze panes, and let's explain why. We'll go ahead and freeze the top row and see what happens when I scroll down through the data set. As I'm scrolling down through the data set, the first row, Read Furniture Store, remains constant on the screen. If I was to print it, it would only print once at the top, but as I scroll up and down through the records, I see it remain at the top. Now that's not very helpful for us. What would be very helpful is if we could freeze row 5, and as we scrolled through we could see those titles. But that's a way we could freeze the first row. And if I come back to freeze panes, I can unfreeze panes, and then it's just the normal spreadsheet. Okay, now the way freeze panes works is it freezes every row above the active cell. So I'm now in cell B6. It will freeze rows 1 through 5, and it also freezes every row to the left of the active cell. So if I'm in B6, it will freeze rows 1 through 5 and column A. So we will always see the transaction number when we scroll to the right. So put your cursor in B6, do freeze panes, and this time just hit freeze panes, the first option. Notice where it's put the freezing lines. As I scroll down through the transactions, I can see those titles in rows 1 through 5, and as I scroll back to the right, let's say I had a number of columns, transaction number always appears on the screen. So that's really the benefit of freezing the rows and columns using freeze panes. We can always see on the screen what we want to see, no matter how many rows and how many columns we have. Okay, let's talk about managing page breaks now. Okay, we're still in the View tab. We're going to go put our cursor back in B6, and we're going to go to Page Break Preview. Now, these are one of the 3 views that we talked about that were down in the lower right-hand corner that we introduced in the first lecture of Chapter 1. So we have the normal view, the Page Break Preview view, and the Page Layout view. Okay, so we'll keep it in Page Break Preview view, and notice that our data are on 6 pages. It tells us that, and it tells us where the page breaks are. Okay. Alright, now one of the things that we'd like to do is keep all of the transactions from a certain date, from the same date, on the same page. So if we looked at page 1, we have March 11th transactions, March 12th, March 13th, and then most of the March 13th transactions are on page 2. we would like to manage the page breaks and keep all of the transactions for March 13th on the same page. So we're going to move where that page break is located. We'll put our cursor in A45, and what it's going to do is when we manage the page breaks, it's going to put the page break right above this active cell. So if our active cell is in row 45, it's going to put the page break right after 44. Okay, now we have to move to the Page Layout tab, and that's where we can manage the page breaks and do things like print titles and things of that nature. So we're going to go ahead from the Page Layout tab and the Page Setup area, we're going to go Insert Page Break. Notice that we have moved that page break up one row so that all of the March 12th transactions are on one page and all of the March 13th transactions are on another page. We'll scroll down to row 89 and notice that we have March 24th, a lot of 25th, and then more 25th records. We need to move that page break up so that there is a break between the March 24th and 25th transactions. We'll put our cursor in A89 and do the same exact thing, breaks, and insert page break. And now we have all of the transactions from each day on the same page. Okay, now we're going to talk about setting and clearing a print area. In this example, we're going to talk about printing just the transactions that are on March 1st. And so let's go ahead and highlight the range of cells E5, okay, E5 through J15. Now notice the print area is on 6 pages. If I hit print right now, it would print those 6 pages exactly how it appears on the screen. But we can set an area, or a particular area, to print. So we'll go to this tab. It's under Page Layout, Page Setup, Print Area, and Set Print Area. Now notice when I move my cursor away from that area, this is the only area that's going to print when I do a file print. So all we have now are the March 1st transactions, what department and what furniture, what payment type, transaction type, and amount. Again, this is the only thing that's going to print when I go ahead and do that. Okay, and then I can easily clear that when I go to Print Area, Clear Print Area, it's back to normal again. The final topic in this hands-on exercise is printing titles. Now when we froze the rows and columns like we have right now, and as I scroll down it's still frozen, we see these first 5 rows at the top, but when I go and print it, it will only appear once. But let's say I wanted to print this so that row 5 always appeared at the top of the print, so that a reader of this long report would see all the titles in row 5 at the top of every page, not just the first page that printed. So I could go to Print Titles in the Page Setup, and then it asks me for some information. Rows you want to repeat at top? Well, I want to repeat row 5 at the top. So I just type in 5, and actually the better way to do that is we can actually click on row 5, and notice what it does. It actually says start with row 5, and then it has a colon, and it says end with row 5. So it's repeating row 5 to 5, so that first row. And what column do you want to repeat? Well, we're going to repeat columns A and B. So the first 2 columns are going to appear on every page that prints, and that top row, row 5, is going to appear on every page that prints. Okay. We could print preview it, and this is what it would look like in the print preview. We've got the titles like we assumed we would, and as I scroll through, it doesn't matter what page I'm on, we get the same 2 columns, A and B, and the same row at the top, which is row 5. So that's our Module 1 on Chapter 4.